We here at the Sports History Network proudly partner with 26 podcasts, all revolving around the history of sports. But did you know that many of our hosts were sports history authors way before they started their shows? It's true. We've got Joe Ziemba, host of When Football Was Football, Joe Zagurski, host of Pro Football in the 1970s, Mark Morthier, host of Yesterday's Sports, Tommy Phillips, host of Lombardi Memories, and Scott Adamson, co-host of From the 55-Yard Line. All these authors have many books for you to choose from. To check them out, go to our website at sportshistorynetwork.com/sportshistorybooks. Pick up your copy today. Soundtrack provided by Kevin MacLeod of filmmusic.io.
We're going to talk about a Hall of Fame wide receiver in this episode. One of the greats of the game, played for the Pittsburgh Steelers, my team, and one of my fan favorites of the team at wide receiver ever. That's John Stallworth. Came out of Alabama A&M and played in 4 Super Bowl victories for the Steelers. His story's coming up in just a moment.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history on a day-to-day basis. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time. So as we come out of the tunnel of the Sports History Network, let's take the field and go no huddle through the portal of positive gridiron history with pigskindispatch.com.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of PigskinDispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history. And today we are going to talk about one of the greats of all time in the wide receiver position, one of my personal favorites, John Stallworth. Now, most of us have heard of John Stallworth as the Pro Football Hall of Fame wide receiver that played his entire NFL career for the Pittsburgh Steelers on 4 Super Bowl championship teams in the 1970s. However, there is much more to this man's remarkable life. Just who is John Stallworth then? Well, we hope to answer this question and more in a tribute to this man, Hall of Famer John Stallworth. He was born on July 15, 1952 in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. His parents, Mary and David Stallworth, raised 4 children of the family there in Tuscaloosa County. John, like most boys in the area, grew up and dreamed of one day playing college football for his hometown team, the University of Alabama Crimson Tide. Now, Tuscaloosa is a town of about 100,000 people, and at its very heart, both physically and emotionally, is the university, and especially its Crimson Tide football team. Alabama football in the 1960s was at the apex of the collegiate gridiron hierarchy in the decade, just where their wily old coach, Paul Bear Bryant, wanted them to be. Bryant's Crimson Tide football teams compiled the nation's best record in the 60s, including winning the national championships in 1961, 1964, and 1965, and having its second undefeated team along with 1961 and 1966. And many say the Tide probably should have been at least the co-national champions in 1966. So definitely had 3 national championships in a decade, could have had a 4th. Needless to say, it was very much the aspirations of every young boy, especially in Tuscaloosa, to put on the crimson helmet and have Bear Bryant as your sideline boss. John Stallworth was no exception. However, his dream was not to be, for the talented Mr. Stallworth had, as his fate, had other plans for him. Now, according to the Encyclopedia of Alabama website, Stallworth had an initial diagnosis of having polio when he suffered a temporary paralysis in his legs. Now, John Stallworth Jr., his son, told the Pro Football Hall of Fame audience at his induction that when he was the presenter at his Father's Day enshrinement, that his father was misdiagnosed with a strychnine disease at the age of 5 or 6. And fortunately, he had not contracted polio, but some fear that wrongful diagnosis put John Stallworth's football capabilities in question the rest of his young life. Now, John's high school football career was described as mediocre. As a running back and captain of his Tuscaloosa Central High School team, the group could muster only 1 winning game during his senior year. Thus, Stallworth failed to impress and was not recruited by Alabama's head coach, who was looking for blue-chip superstars to fill his roster. Now, it had been heartbreaking for Mr. Stallworth, I'm sure, and not to be wanted by his hometown school, the one he dreamed of, and could picture himself in that Alabama uniform running out on the field. But he didn't let it get him down. The guy has some fortitude. In fact, it may have given him a little bit of added drive to succeed. He ended up attending Alabama A&M, a traditionally black university. At A&M, he started his collegiate career playing defensive back and running back, positions that he didn't feel that comfortable in. Stallworth was driven to make a very bold move one day. Alabama A&M was not a passing offense. There weren't too many that were. But he still approached his head coach, Louis Cruz, and asked if he could be worked out in the receiver position. There was not a lot of expectation of greatness from this move by the coaching staff at A&M, but the coaches finally they obliged. John Stallworth was driven to impress, though, as he worked hard at learning the position, practicing tireless before, after, and during team sessions. As John Jr. described back there at the Pro Football Hall of Fame, he said, quote, "After setting the records for touchdowns scored in a season, passes caught in a season, and leading his team to a conference title, he became an All-American," unquote. At the time, for many seasons thereafter, Stallworth was the only player from Alabama A&M that had ever been invited to play in a Senior Bowl. Think about that for a second. Very prestigious. Back in the early 1970s, few NFL teams kept tabs on the players from the HBCU schools. Their sights were set on the big traditional D1 powerhouses like Alabama, Notre Dame, USC, Ohio State, and the like. None of them, except the scout extraordinaire, Bill Nunn of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Nunn had previously been a reporter for the Pittsburgh Courier newspaper and followed his father's footsteps on covering black athletes. He was very familiar and comfortable and was known by the HBCU schools as a friend. Nunn was aware of John Stallworth and his athleticism and truly wanted the receiver to be drafted by Pittsburgh. So much so that he had some pretty ruthless things that he incorporated into this recruiting mission, such as he borrowed the only film on the young receiver from Texas A&M, but he promised them, "Hey, I'll pass it on to the other NFL scouts and the other teams." But mysteriously, it somehow vanished. John was pretty much an unknown commodity at the 1974 NFL draft because of tactics like this, and the Steelers were just salivating, waiting to pounce on him, but they were patient. They knew that nobody else really knew too much about him, not as much as they did anyway. In the first round, they took what would be the perfect tandem to place with Stallworth as wide receiver, Lynn Swann from USC. In round two, they took a stud on defense in Jack Lambert, the middle linebacker from Kent State. Now the time was perfect in round 4 in this historic Steelers 1974 NFL draft as they took John Stallworth in the 4th round. Now, just to prove what John Stallworth meant to the franchise in his 11-year career, here's just a few of the highlights of it. He caught 537 passes for 8,723 yards and 63 touchdowns, all Steelers team records at the time of his retirement. And remember, when he played, he had Swann on the other side, and he had 2 pretty good running backs too, Rocky Blyer, Franco Harris, who each had 1,000-yard seasons during part of his career. Now, he was named as an All-Pro in 1979, All-AFC in 1979 and 1984, and played in 4 Pro Bowls. John had 12 postseason touchdown catches and 17 consecutive postseason games with a reception. He still holds the Super Bowl record for average yard per catch with 24.4 yards for every grab he took in a Super Bowl. He holds the record for a single game average, 40.33 yards set in Super Bowl number 14. Think about that. That's almost half the field. Swann is actually second in that category with 40.25 yards on average in Super Bowl 10. And Stallworth has the 3rd place finish as well, 38.33 yard average in Super Bowl 13. I think the Steelers didn't like to air the ball out a little bit in those Super Bowls they won. Well, Stallworth also played in 6 AFC championship games, was part of the Steelers' 4 Super Bowl championships, and was named team MVP twice during his career. He also scored a game-winning touchdown on a 73-yard touchdown reception in Super Bowl 14 against the Los Angeles Rams that really iced the game over for the Steelers. The Pro Football Hall of Fame enshrined him as a member in their class in the year of 2002, and Stallworth also was an inaugural member of the Steelers Hall of Honor as a member of the class of 2017. Yeah, Stallworth was a very productive playmaker in Steelers dynasty of the 1970s, where they won those 4 Super Bowls in a span of 6 seasons. But it's interesting, at his Hall of Fame speech, when he finally took the podium, it's interesting. He said something to the effect, he got to Pittsburgh in the middle of winter 1974, shortly after the draft. The trees were barren, he said. It was cold. It was miserable. It was dusty. He's from the South. He said he really wasn't that impressed, or really wasn't that crazy about Pittsburgh. And remember, the steel mills were churning in that time. But just a year later, after Super Bowl IX, big victory for the Steelers. They beat the Minnesota Vikings. It was about the same time of year he came back to Pittsburgh. The trees were barren. There was snow on the ground. It was cold. It was dingy. But he loved it because that's where he found the people of Pittsburgh that warmed his heart and made him proud to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. And that's the way John Stallworth is. And that's the way I remember him. Guy was graceful as anything, 6'2", 191 pounds. He could fit in almost any era as a wide receiver. Imagine today if you were told you could get an athletic receiver, 6'2", 191 pounds in the draft, 4th round. You'd be ecstatic. Well, he was a great Steeler. I think he may be just, one of the best receivers the Steelers ever had, if not the best. And I'm talking, I know they had Antonio Brown and Hines Ward and Lynn Swann and, Deontay Johnson's and their Santonio Holmes. I understand that. There was something about John Stallworth. Wasn't afraid to go across the middle, could get the yak, could catch the deep ball, could throw a block. John Stallworth, one of my favorite Steelers as a wide receiver. Hope you enjoyed this little bit of football history. Hope you will join us each and every day for more on the Pigskin Dispatch. Till tomorrow, everybody, have a great gridiron day. That's all the football history we have today, folks. Join us back tomorrow for more of your football history. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
It was just another ordinary day in the offices of the Pittsburgh Guardian newspaper circa 1924. But for Marla Delft, assistant editor, everything was about to change. For she was about to discover the awesome attractiveness of Row 1 brand retro sports paraphernalia items thanks to Orville Mulligan, sports writer.
And there it is.
Wow, Orville, that's really the bee's knees.
Isn't it just? A poster-sized replica of the actual 1909 World Series program cover.
I can see that. But where did you get it? And where'd you get it framed?
I ordered it from the Row 1 website, where over 6,000 items of sports memorabilia from the 1880s to the 1990s are available for reproduction, in multiple sizes and in several different materials, with over a dozen styles of frame to choose from for prints like this.
Well, I'm sure Mr. Delft would love to put up more of these in the office. But I'm equally as sure they're beyond this newspaper's budget.
Not at all, my dear Marla. See for yourself. Go to sportshistorynetwork.com/row1.
sportshistorynetwork.com/row1. Oh my, these are good prices. Oh, and look at this stuff. Oklahoma-Nebraska football, college basketball art, Michael Jordan items.
And so
retro
it was that
sports
Marla Delft
advertisement
discovered the
placards.
splendiferous magic of Row 1 sports memorabilia, arts, and prints. You can too by visiting sportshistorynetwork.com/row1. That's ROW1. number 1 today for access to the full Row 1 catalog of gallery prints and gifts like t-shirts, long-sleeve shirts, telephone cases, coffee mugs, blankets, pillows, towels, and even shower curtains. Act today for 15% discount off all prints with coupon code SHN15 and 20% off all other items with coupon code SHN20 at checkout. And keep your dial locked to the Sports History Network for the exciting chronicles of the 1920 sports world in Orville Mulligan, Sports Writer. Coming soon.